If you're frugal and you'd like to travel, we've got tips. Hi, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
From Under the Median. Every week on this channel, we talk practical frugality and living with a spirit of joy and abundance on a budget. Now, those of you who have followed us for a while know that our on a budget for a number of years dictated that we did not go on vacations at all.
No big travels.
But that changed, and it's all because of
you.
That's absolutely right. There were so many of you that said in the comment section, boy, I think you ought to really rethink that ban on travel.
And we listened to your advice.
We did, and we are so excited to share with you today. We're going to show you our actual vacation budget, talk you through where we went, what we did, and along the way, we're going to give you tips for saving money. And we're going to tell you whether we came in on budget or whether we didn't.
Now, are you glad we did this? Are you glad we took their tip?
Absolutely.
Me
Absolutely.
too.
You know what? You guys gave us the best advice.
Yeah.
So as we get started, as I mentioned, I'm going to show you our actual vacation budget. And if you like that vacation budget worksheet, you can get a copy of it all your own. I put it in a little ebook. You get the worksheet, and I show you our vacation budget as an example of how to fill this one out. Larry, the first thing we did, this was like 6 months, easy 6 months before we ever left on the trip. We started talking about destinations.
Where to go?
You want to tell them like what that whole process was like?
Well, we had to go through a few, possible destinations before we arrived at the best one. In fact, it was one I don't think we really were thinking about.
It wasn't. So we kept this running list of destinations, and then we began to investigate accommodations in those areas. Availability. That was the big thing. We booked our trip in January.
Yeah.
We didn't go into the very last week of May. And that is, by the way, our first tip. Plan well in advance, because the closer you get to that window of date that you want to go, a lot of the inexpensive places will be booked up.
And I think that's more true now than ever, because now that people are free to travel, there is a lot more of that going on. Therefore, accommodations are getting filled up much quicker.
What's interesting is weeks after we had already booked the cabin, and we'll tell you where we went in just a sec, but I saw this article come out online that said that travel to the specific place that we had picked, that the cost of accommodations had gone up 30% or something. It had gone up just recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, we booked right before it went up. So make sure you look well in advance and book your accommodations in advance. Now, we had something else going on. So we had the four of us, our nuclear family. We still have 2 sons at home, but we decided, being the amazingly generous frugal parents that we are, that we would call our 2 grown sons and say, would you like to go on vacation with us? And then we said the magic words.
For free.
Yeah. We said, we will foot the bill. And they said, when? Let us get the time off work. So we actually had them come over. We narrowed our list of possibilities, and we literally had them over. We said, come over for supper. We'll sit down and we'll show you the possible places we've narrowed it down to. Because look, it was their vacation too, and they're adults, and they deserved to enjoy their vacation just as much as we did. There's nothing worse than somebody saying, come along, I'll pay your way, and then it's something you really didn't want to do in the first place.
Well, not only did we narrow down the exact location, we actually booked the cabin that night. So we booked the cabin, narrowed it all the way down. And we had their input, so everybody had a little say in it. It was a nice experience.
Now, when you are looking for accommodations, this is frugal tip number 2. One of the best places to really honestly look online for beginning your destination sort of research are the travel websites. And I think people who are frugal like us tend to avoid those websites thinking, oh, they're going to be nothing but really high-priced places, and they're going to spam me with a whole lot of, you want to go here, there, and the other place, or whatever. But, I mean, really, here's what you get on those websites. Not only do you find out about accommodations, not only do you find out about transportation, you also find out about restaurants. You also find out about sightseeing. All those things are, man, in one area. And you know what they have on there? Real reviews by real people who have been there. These aren't like paid people who are like, hey, try out XYZ place and then write about it on your website. These are real people. So you get more honest reviews on those websites. So here's an idea of some of those websites. So you might want to check out Travelocity. We looked there. We also looked at Expedia and TripAdvisor. We really liked TripAdvisor too. So those are 3 places for you to look. Make sure you look at those places when you're beginning your search.
Now, when we were looking specifically for the accommodation, we automatically ruled out staying at a hotel. There's a lot of hotels where we stayed, but hotels tend to be very expensive. So what we decided to do was go with an Airbnb. So then we had to narrow it down to an Airbnb that would sleep 6.
Right.
And we wanted it in such a manner that we could kind of pair off so that the younger boys could maybe sleep in a room and so on. We had to figure out how the accommodations were going to work best for each member of the family.
Now, the only thing the older boys said was, we will like share a room, but please don't make us share a bed. They're like grown men, and they're like, we want our own bed. So honestly, that did sort of, it didn't cramp our style. It just meant that it narrowed down a lot of opportunities that maybe we would have taken that we couldn't, because we really felt like we needed to honor their desire to at least sleep in a separate bed.
But fortunately, since we started this process in January, we did have quite a few different places available to pick from.
Now, we're going to tell you about the accommodations that we picked. But first, Larry is going to tell you, drum roll. I know you guys love my drum roll. Drum roll, where did we go?
We went to the Smoky Mountain National Park area.
Woo!
So that would be Pigeon
so
Forge.
Much fun.
Yeah,
and guys, in honor of our trip, we are drinking out of our Smoky Mountain cups.
Yep, there they
That's
are.
That's right. There they are.
We that was our one and only souvenir. So
yes, we paid big bucks for these mugs. We all have matching mugs. We'll tell you in a sec our advice about setting aside money for souvenirs and sightseeing.
Yeah. So where we went, just to be clear, it was just an area right very near Gatlinburg, and we stayed in a cabin in the mountains. And it was called the Shady Rest, a beautiful log cabin house. Oh, it was awesome.
Now, can I tell them the story behind that? Okay.
Okay.
So he put me in charge of finding accommodation, narrowing down accommodations. So he comes home from work and I'm like, okay, I've narrowed it down to 4 different places. And he's like, oh, these are all in town. These are in towns. And I'm like, yeah. Because that's really, honestly, it was a little farther from the mountains, and that's where I was finding like the least expensive price tags for accommodation. And he looked at me and said,
I want to stay in the mountains.
Oh, yeah. He was very clear. If I'm going to go to the mountains, I want to stay in the mountains. In a cabin in the mountains.
Oh, yeah.
So while we were driving to said cabin in said mountains, I think the roads were at about a 45-degree angle. And it's getting a little testy in there. And he looks at me, he's like, why did you do this? I said, because
I'd forgotten.
You told me
Yeah.
I want to stay
In the mountains.
And baby, this is in the mountains.
We'll get to our vehicle. We did not have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and these roads were just one step back from a 4-wheel drive concourse. I've never seen such steep roads, and I didn't even know if a front-wheel drive van would do these roads. But, we were just, I think, within the tolerances of what it would do and how much traction it would bite into these steep inclines.
So that, by the way, is our third tip. When you're looking for accommodations, our honest advice, even though we talk frugality, and we're going to show you exactly what our real budget was. We have everything written down, each area of the budget, what we spent, and whether we came in under or over the budget. Our advice for accommodations is stay where you really want to stay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We absolutely have 0 regrets with that mountain cabin. even though it cost us a little bit more money, maybe, I don't know, a couple $100. It wasn't that much more money than it would have been to stay a little bit farther away from the mountains and in a city. So when you're looking, be honest with yourself. If what you want is what Larry wanted, the staying in the cabin in the mountains experience, then figure out how to juggle the different percentages in your budget to make it happen. Because for us, it was absolutely worth it.
You know, we looked at this as a payoff to living frugally all the rest of the year. So there were some things we did that we didn't cut corners. We didn't try to go the very cheapest route. We tried to go the best route. Because when you're taking a vacation, you want to have fun. It needs to be enjoyable. It needs to be, this is the reward for all the rest of the year that you pinch pennies and live in a very economical way.
So we're going to show you here. So our budget for accommodations. So the whole budget for the trip was $2,000. All right. And so for accommodations, there is what we had budgeted for accommodations. We had, I got to look around here, $800 budgeted for accommodations. And you're going to see that we actually went a little bit over that amount. And we're going to explain that in just a second. So the mountain cabin actually was a little bit underneath of that. But I came up with a super bright idea like right before we left. And so that super bright idea actually cost us a couple $100 extra. We were underneath of what we were going to spend on accommodations, and we were going to drive separately. The older boys were going to drive separately, drive one of their vehicles and meet us there. And then literally days before we left on vacation, what happened?
Well, our second oldest son, John, his car was rear-ended. It didn't put it out of commission, but it made it in such a manner that with some damage to the exhaust, he didn't want to drive it on a long trip. That actually turned out to be a good thing that he didn't drive. Not a good thing that he got into an accident, but a good thing that we didn't take two cars. Because the Smoky Mountains, it's a well-traveled park. It's a free national park.
Right.
It's the only one in the United States that's free. Therefore, it attracts a lot of tourists. So had we taken two vehicles, it would have been very difficult for us to find parking, to even have stayed together, because you're on very busy roads, a lot of traffic. And I don't even think I would have wanted to have taken two vehicles up that steep driveway to our cabin. It just would have been difficult. So this turned out to work out for the best.
So, and why did that cost us extra money? Couldn't we all just pile into one car? Well, we have a Prius, and 6 people ain't fitting in a Prius. I'm just saying. So we could have taken both of our vehicles, but what we chose to do instead was to rent a van. Now, this is where our next set of tips comes in. If you're in a position like we are and you got a smaller vehicle, you got a bigger family, and you are going to rent a vehicle, we actually have some tips for you on how to save on rental vehicles.
I'd like to say just a couple of things about renting the van. Renting a van, we got a good deal on it. I'll just say that. You're driving a fairly new vehicle. It takes the pressure off a little bit on how well will this hold up on a long trip. Maybe your car's older. Maybe it's not as reliable. We've had breakdowns on trips in the past, and that's no fun. So that takes a little bit of that guesswork out of it. You're driving ours happened to be a 2020 van, and well taken care of, well serviced. So there is a certain advantage to renting.
But it did add to the vacation budget.
For sure it did.
So I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but the whole vacation budget was $2,000. And because we rented a vehicle, that vehicle took up $660 of that vacation fund. But it's less than we thought it was going to be. So anytime something happens, you got to juggle those figures. Either you need to throw some more into the vacation fund, even if you have to do it at the last minute, or you have to juggle your percentages on what you're going to spend on each area of your vacation. So what we chose to do, we put a little bit extra into the vacation budget. We bumped it up from $1,500 to $2,000, and I started looking around. Now, when you're looking for a rental vehicle, you need to be aware that even if it's the same rental service, not all locations of that rental service will be equal across the board as far as cost is concerned. If a rental service is either in or right near an airport, then in general, the cost to rent a vehicle there is going to be a little more. If you're willing to go out a little farther, now it just so happened that we had some rental places that were within, I don't know, half a mile of our house. And so I knew that I could look much closer to my home.
You want to make sure, too, that you're asking them all of the right questions. You want to know, do they charge you mileage? Do they charge you, are there extra charges, kind of hidden charges in there? When Hope did the comparison, I think one of the national rental names, I forget which one you called, wasn't it around $900 for the time?
It was around $900, but it would have been even more than that. It would have topped well over $1,000, because what rental places do is when you rent a vehicle, first of all, you have to be 25 or older. Clearly, we are.
We passed that test.
And that rental only covers you and your spouse. It doesn't cover any other person driving that vehicle. Well, we were driving 10 hours, and by golly, the older boys were going to share the driving because, we were paying for the trip. So we wanted to make sure they were on the rental agreement. Well, that was an extra, hold on to your hats, $25 a day per additional driver. We were renting that vehicle for 6 days. So do the math. It would have gone up quite a bit from that base price of just below $900. So I told Larry, I said, look, this is going to cost us around $1,200. I'm not sure we really want to do this. We were going to go on the trip, but we were trying to figure out different possibilities. Now, when you're looking around, the other thing you need to know is go ahead and look through those travel agencies that I mentioned, Expedia, and those travel destination type places, TripAdvisor, Travelocity. They actually have rental agreements with the large companies, and sometimes, not all the time, but check the rental prices. Sometimes if you go through those websites, you can actually get a better deal on a vehicle than if you contract with that rental service individually. Now, the third tip on saving on a rental vehicle is the one that we wound up using, and it is to rent through.
A lot of dealerships will offer rental vehicles. They do that anyway. If you get into an accident and your car has to go in for extended body work at a dealership, or if you have extended service, they'll rent you a car if it's not an insurance settlement. So they do rent. So Hope happened to call the dealership that we bought our Honda Fit from. Now, we bought that car in February, so it's a fairly recent purchase. Another advantage is that they have just started the rental service. They had just started that up within 6 months. So they were very generous in accommodating us. They gave us a discount because of the car purchase, and they also gave us a free day because we took the car on a Saturday and we weren't planning on starting the trip until on Monday. So they said, we just won't charge you for that Sunday. And it ended up that we went ahead and decided to take it out on Sunday, and so we got an extra day for free. And then they did not charge anything on the mileage, and we put a lot of miles on that vehicle. I think we put 1,600 miles on it, if I remember right.
And they did not charge a penny extra for putting either of the two older boys on the rental agreement. They said, yep, they can drive the vehicle. That's no problem at all. No extra charge. So when you're looking for a vehicle, look at the new car dealerships in your area. See if they have a rental agency side to their dealership. If they don't, it doesn't cost you a penny to call and ask if they actually rent out cars to the public, because it may be one of those little known kind of secret things. The total cost for renting that van from Saturday morning to the following Saturday morning, $660 inclusive. We're going to give them a shout out on the program because we really like them. It's Bob Lindsay Honda, guys, in Peoria, and it is their rental car agency. So
first class dealership.
We were absolutely thrilled with them.
Yeah, all the way around. Good
now,
dealership.
We have a rental vehicle. We're leaving. We think we're leaving on a Monday, but no. I came up with a brilliant idea.
Actually, it was.
I I said, let's just, what are we waiting for? The boys are off work on Sunday. Why don't we leave on Sunday instead of Monday? And we'll divide up that long leg of getting from here to the Smoky Mountains into 2 days instead of one. So I looked around online and I found an Airbnb just for overnight halfway between here and our destination in the Smoky Mountains, and it cost us an extra $200.
I'm going to tell you why that was so brilliant. I would not have wanted to have driven what would have been about an 11.5-hour drive, counting stops, all the way to Gatlinburg from our house. And then arriving at this very remote log cabin that was extremely difficult to find. I mean, it was excruciating to find. I would not have wanted to have been trying to find that in the dark after having driven 11.5 hours.
The best part of the whole trip down there was when Larry was trying to find the log cabin. And the owner had said, do not rely on GPS. GPS will mess up in the mountains. It will give you wrong directions. Here are the correct directions. So I'm reading directions. I have the piece of paper, guys, in front of my face. I'm reading it to him verbatim. He's like, can't be right. That's not what the GPS says. I said, honey, she told us, do not rely on the GPS. And finally, Larry blurts out, he doesn't believe me. So he hollers to the boys in the back seat. All right, boys, somebody call this woman on your phone and we'll get directions from her directly. And all 4 boys in unison yelled out, no,
there's no cell phone
bars.
service.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
To tell the truth, she did give us good directions, and Hope had her directions, but the roads weren't laid out in a real clear manner, so it was very difficult to know where you were supposed to turn, even with good directions. Well, we finally found it after going a few bad turns up these like straight up hills.
That was my fault.
I thought for sure
That was my
the
fault.
van was just going to kick back and fall on its roof.
After
And-
one of those wrong turns, like I go, oh. And it was like one of those, not only did the road go up like 45 degrees, it went around a corner. I go, I think this is the wrong road. And he didn't get mad at all, but he had to slowly back down this narrow road that was at this horrible angle. And thought, oh dear God. I mean, I could almost see the angel chorus, you guys welcoming us to Jesus, because I had made this horrible mistake and misread the name of the road. So yeah, and for those of you who wonder, this is a question that you guys ask us a lot. Do we ever fight?
Oh.
Well, we didn't fight, but
We have disagreements.
it was a little bit tense.
Testy.
We're gonna say it was
Testy.
very tense in the car at that moment.
And it wasn't Hope's fault. I wasn't mad
no,
at
it was
Hope.
kinda my
It
fault.
was just the circumstances, and I blurted out a couple times, "This is an absolute nightmare." I'm thinking Alfred Hitchcock, and everything else. But we found the cabin, and once we did, we did okay every time we returned to it.
We have covered accommodations. We have covered transportation. We're going to talk food now, guys. When you're renting an Airbnb or a VRBO, then you got a kitchen. You got a full kitchen. So we fully intended to make complete and utter use of said kitchen. And we brought a whole lot of food from home. Now, once again, you're on vacation. So what we did for food, if it was food that we would have consumed at home anyway, we took it out of our regular grocery budget and we did not put it on the vacation expense sheet.
Because you have to eat anyway.
Right. If it was a special food, like I made homemade granola and I put in a whole bag of chocolate chips.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. It was a big vat of granola, guys, okay? So
That was good on the road.
it was good. It was our
good-
road snack.
good road snack,
And
yeah.
so that bag of chocolate chips, yes, I went to the store. Yes, I paid full price for it because I could not find them on sale. And I stuck that whole bag in the granola. And that amount of money came off of the vacation budget. Anything special that we bought just for the trip, that went on the food budget for vacation. The other portion of the food budget was set aside for eating out at restaurants because, well, once again, you're on vacation. So you're going to want to soak up a little bit of that local flavor. Now, when it comes to food, there are some really specific things that you do as far as menu planning. I'm going to show you how I did it, how I made it easy peasy, slicey, cheesy, so that I was not spending all my time in the kitchen of the Airbnb day and night, cooking and doing dishes. When you begin to plan your meals, make sure that you write out each date that you'll be gone. Make sure you have room for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then write your basic menu plan for each of those. After you're done with that, make a detailed ingredient list. Take each one of those recipes, break it down to individual ingredients. This was the actual list of what we took on our vacation. You notice I even created a special code, so I knew whether I was going to make it at home ahead of time. I did as much ahead of time as I possibly could. If it was a raw ingredient we were taking with us, and if it was a cooler item. So some of these items have more than one of these symbols next to them. As I packed it and got it ready to go, was checked off. Anything with a C was kept in the cooler. And when you get all done, you want to transfer all of your meals now that you've got them pretty much set in stone, and you're going to transfer them to a menu plan like this. You'll notice I planned breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then all the way at the bottom, I've got a notes section where I made a note of everything that I made ahead of time. So I made sure I didn't accidentally forget something I made ahead of time and stuck in the freezer, and all the snacks we had with us in the car. When it comes to car snacks, a couple of things. Think things that aren't gonna melt and things that aren't gonna wind up kind of goopy.
Messing up the rental van.
Like either wind up across the seat of the rental van or across your kid's shirt or jeans. So just think in terms of things that aren't going to be messy. That is how we handled food. Now, after you get all of your food packed, there are some other things that you want to make sure you do not forget. There are other items that you want to make sure that you get picked. Now, this is a frugal tip. Why? Because when we forget things and we are on the road and we're on vacation, we wind up buying them after we get there. And this is a frugal tip. Why? Because when we are on the road and we forget things, we wind up running into wherever we need to find them and paying whatever we need to pay to get them. And don't forget a clothing list for each member of the family. When the kids pack their things and get them ready to go, all they have to do is check them off.
And having the list in that manner makes it just so easy just to have the kids look at the list, check it off. Then you know for sure that they're going to pack exactly what they need. We're going to pack what we need, and nothing will be forgotten.
As far as what you want to do for restaurants, we actually have some really specific ideas for what you can do to find some really great restaurants. Because you may or may not have noticed, but on the original plan, I actually had restaurants already written in because I had done all the legwork ahead of time to find restaurants that we thought we were going to like. The first tip, frugal tip, for finding restaurants that they might like is to look where, Larry?
Well, you can get a visitor's guide. Usually, you can get those. You can get them in the mail ahead of time. If you just write to the Chamber of Commerce, maybe the state where you're going to will offer these. Certainly, there's a lot of offering for the Smoky Mountains because it's such a high traveled area. Mm-hmm. That'll give you some ideas of restaurants. Then once you pick out a few, if it's right along your travel area or on your route, then you might go online and look up and see, do they offer the kind of food that you eat? And in our case, we're vegan, so it's a little bit difficult and challenging to find a restaurant, especially in the South.
I was just going to say that.
That has any kind of vegan food. The South is not known for being vegan.
No vegans down there.
If you like pork, there's a lot of pork, but not a lot of vegetables.
It was very challenging, very, very challenging. And then the other thing we looked at when we looked at the restaurant online was we looked to see if we can find a menu, a sample menu. We looked to see if we could find prices. Those are kind of the things you want to look for. Now, here's the other caveat. Just because they're in the travel guide doesn't mean they're like good. It just means they paid to be in the travel guide. Yeah. You may very well find coupons in the back of the travel guide for some of those restaurants. Well, if you save 10% off of your tab, and it's not a restaurant you're going to like in the first place, or it's too high price for you, it's probably not worth even going to. So the next tip that we have for actually finding a family-friendly restaurant and one that's frugal but with like really good food is to find somebody that actually lives there. Ask if you rent an Airbnb. Usually the Airbnb owners will have like a guide book. When you first walk in, they'll put it someplace where you can for sure see it. It has all the rules of the Airbnb, checkout time, things you need to, be aware of, like, how to run the hot tub controls.
She had actually a printed out manual for that, which we needed.
Didn't care.
We needed to know how to do it.
Because we were going to use the hot tub.
We did. I used it every night, every single night. I was in the hot tub.
That is our new rule for Airbnb
have to have a hot
look
tub.
to see if it has a hot tub.
Do you know I'd never been in a hot tub until this vacation?
No.
I had never been in. Well, there's some that
Well, at hotels we have.
not the same as a smaller one. The smaller ones, and then those jets just rip. I mean, they are good. It was a good experience. Than the big huge ones that they have at the swimming pools.
Also in that house guide at the Airbnb, you will find recommendations from the owner of the Airbnb for area restaurants. Usually, especially since Airbnbs are usually designed for larger groups or for families, they're going to tell you these ones are family friendly. These one gives you they give you large portions for a great price. That kind of information, if you want to know it ahead of time, Airbnb host or hostesses are renowned for their interaction with guests ahead of time. If you're like, hey, we're traveling, this is what we need as far as food is concerned, where would you recommend? They are usually very, very proactive in answering your questions ahead of time. So ask a local or ask your Airbnb hostess.
Now, just for a little practical application, we did not end up going out to eat. Hope had a restaurant picked out in Gatlinburg. If you've ever been to Gatlinburg, it is extremely busy. And there's a lot of people. The restaurants are busy. The roads are busy. It is highly trafficked. We opted just to ride the trolley in, visit around, walk, and then take the trolley back out. And we ate back at the cabin. We got back there early, and we took all of our lunches on the road with us. That became much easier for seeing the sights than trying to hook up with a restaurant.
We did, however, the kids, they hit a restaurant on the way back
On the way home. They did.
I mean, they did get to go out to eat, but Gatlinburg was crazy.
It was. It was, absolutely.
Another tip is if you're going to a larger city or a busy city like Gatlinburg, look ahead of time. They usually have very proactive, visitor websites. They had a trolley that was great, every 10 or 15 minutes,
and
a new trolley would stop.
It was free. Free, absolutely free. It went from the Gatlinburg Visitor Center right to downtown. It's only a couple of miles, but I would not have wanted to have driven my car into Gatlinburg. No way.
Now, the other way cool thing that happened because of the free trolley was that we met 2 under the median fans.
Oh, that's a great story.
Before we left Illinois, I told Larry, I said, we have to be on our best behavior. We have to remind each other of that. I'm just saying, be on our best behavior because somebody that watches us may actually see us on vacation. And he's like, what are the chances
of that?
He just thought I was loony.
Well, I didn't think it was possible.
And we get on this trolley. We're on our way back to the visitor center. And this lady comes running up to us and she goes, you're Hope, you're Larry, and you're Daniel. And I was like,
she actually named all 4. We had all 4 boys with us. She named all 4 boys.
She was so excited. So we want to give a shout out to our amazing viewers. And they are?
Nathan and Tamika Craig.
Hey,
and
guys.
they're from, I believe they said they're from one of the Carolinas, either North or South Carolina.
They were awesome. It was so much fun to meet them. Guys, if you were ever in the area, we would love to meet you. And if you ever see us out on vacation, stop us and say, hey, because we would love to meet you in person.
Yeah, we ended up talking to him for about 20 minutes in the parking lot. It was fun.
So that was really fun. And Larry had to admit that.
She was right.
Hope was
right. Hope was right.
Yes.
Okay, stop it.
Okay. So Gatlinburg was actually one of the touristy type locations that we went to. Our advice as far as planning sightseeing is concerned, you're going to spend some money on vacation. You just are. What we try to do is find that mix, that happy spot between things that are paid and things that are free. We're going to give you some exact examples from our trip, and all of these examples actually are based on the input from the rest of our family members and our kids. They got to vote on what they wanted to see.
One of the things that I did in terms of getting ready to go to the Smoky Mountains, I didn't know anything about the Smokies. This is a new place. So I got online onto YouTube and looked up Smoky Mountains. And I probably watched about a dozen different videos that tourists had taken, maybe some of the park officials had shot. I wanted to get an idea of what would be practical for us to visit. We only had a few days there. What would be good for our family to go see? What would be worth seeing? So we picked out a few suggestions. We ran those by the rest of the family and then honed it down a little bit more. And then Hope found some on her own through her research.
Well, you need to figure out that sweet spot between the pace your family wants to go and being on vacation. You're only there for a limited amount of time, so there's going to be some things that you really want to get in. So you have to, once again, create that prioritized list. What is the top priority for everybody in the family? And what are some things down at the bottom of the list that if we don't get to them and we don't get to see them, not going to be the end of the world. Our older boys really just wanted to spend time with us. Honestly, they said, let's sightsee, let's go after breakfast, let's be back to the cabin by supper time so that we can eat supper together, just hang out, play board games, sit in the hot tub, and just be together as a family. So for us, that was what was super important, was to time these sort of excursions so that they didn't take up too much of our time.
And we limited the amount of places that we actually visited too. We didn't try to do too much in one day. So we could spend really good quality time at each place that we went to, and we didn't feel hurried.
Consequently, there's some things we didn't get to that, hey, we might be back in that neck of the woods again, because there's some things that we thought, that'd be really cool that we didn't get to do this time, but you can always go back again, guys, for the most part.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot we didn't see. Yeah, but what we did see was really worth it.
Tell them some of the free activities that we did. Let's go from free to paid.
The first day, we visited Laurel Falls. Now, Laurel Falls is a very popular place to go hiking. It's a fairly easy hike. If I recall right, isn't it only a 2-mile hike to the falls from the trail? I think
it was about 1.25 miles in, 1.25 miles back out. Real easy hike.
But it was 2 miles because we had to park about half a mile away.
Oh my gosh, we did.
There's three pullover places to park, and it was busy. I mean, that is one thing about this park. If you're going to go see popular places, go early in the morning and get there. We didn't get there till it was almost afternoon by the time we got there. But it was a nice hike. It's a very pretty walk. It's mostly blacktop, so it was accessible to just about everybody. And the falls were worth it, very pretty. They're in a couple different sections. There's an upper section, a lower section, and there's actually a bridge that goes right over the falls underneath where they run. So it's very, very pretty hike. And Laurel Falls is named after a flower that blooms in that area, and it only comes to bloom in May. And guess what? We happened to be there when it was blooming. I shot a photo of those flowers, very unusual, and I did some research and found out that they're called laurel, and that we happened to be there at the right time. Really fun. Another place we visited was Clingman's Dome. That is the highest point in the Smoky Mountains. By the time you get there, it's a nice little drive, a very fun mountain road, and you park. There's a lot of parking. We got there at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Plenty of places to park that time of the day. And it's a 300-foot climb from the parking lot to the top of where you get to Clingman's Dome. So, 300 foot, that's about 30 stories. Think about walking up a 30-story building up the staircase. That's what you're doing, and it's only a half a mile. So in a half a mile, you're climbing 30 stories. It's a good steep hike, but we're in pretty good shape, and we got to the top with no problem. Once again, the view is worth it. Very pretty. And then and we did this hike the same day too. We did the hike right from Klingman's Dome parking lot to a place called Andrews Bald. And that ended up being another 4 miles, 2 miles there, 2 miles back. And that was an 800-foot drop. To get to the Bald, you're actually going downhill. So we had to climb out of there 800 feet. So we did some serious hiking that day. And boy, did that hot tub feel good that night.
It was so worth it. And all of these hikes were based on recommendations of what the whole family wanted to do. So Larry wanted to do Klingman's Dome. That was his thing. Like from the time we got ready for the trip, he was like, I want to do Klingman's Dome. And our boys wanted 2 things. They wanted a waterfall hike. They wanted to hike to a waterfall.
Yeah.
So we did that one day, and the next day was Klingman's Dome, and they wanted a bona fide, long, extended hike
wilderness hike
through the middle of the mountains.
Yeah,
they wanted to
James-
feel like they were in the mountains.
James particularly wanted that, and he located Andrews Bald, and that is a really pretty hike. I mean, it's just a gorgeous trail. It is a difficult hike. It's not for the faint of heart, and we were so tired walking back that we were barely talking to each other.
The old people may or may not have been whining a little bit on the trip back.
May have been.
The kids had a really good attitude, and it was us that we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to die.
I'm thinking a little shorter hike would have been great, and I've liked to do a lot of hiking in my past, but I do more biking than hiking. So anyway,
That was a long walk. Well, remember, I had just recovered, like 2 weeks before that, I had recovered from the virus who shall not be named. And so even like a week before we left on vacation, I could barely, we have a large hill right out in front of our house. I walk up and down all the time, and I could barely walk up and down it. And we were like, oh, this is going to be interesting on vacation. But really, I mean, providentially, I really feel like my stamina was boosted at the last minute, and I was able to do it, and it was fine.
she did really well. I was very proud of her.
Now let's talk paid sightseeing, because
yeah.
there's going to be some stuff that's going to cost you some money. We're going to tell you what we did, and then I'm going to give you some frugal tips, because that's what this channel is all about. Frugality.
This was Hope's pick, and I had my doubts about it because it's a kind of a privately owned place. It's not run by the park district. It's not run by the national park. It was in a family. It began with two boys who happened to discover this particular location when they were kids.
Okay, and it was Tuckaliki Caverns.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ever go on a trip to the Smoky Mountains, do it worth every single penny that we paid to do it.
Yeah, Tuckaliki Caverns is located in Townsend, Tennessee, and there's actually a visitor center about a half a mile from the caves. So you can get quite a bit of information. There's a lot of information online. It gives the history. And it's a guided tour, and it is I believe it was at least a mile. Wasn't it a mile or a mile and a half walk through the cavern itself?
I think it was a little over a mile.
Yeah, it was over a mile, and it isn't extremely well lit. It's lit good enough to see, but they don't throw a lot of lights in there. It was a little difficult to take pictures. Now the boys had iPhones, which did a great job, but it is worth seeing this cave. A lot of really neat formations, and when you get to the very end of the hike, the reward is it's got the largest subterranean waterfall on the east side of the United States, and it is spectacular. So I would highly recommend it. It's $20 a person right
$20
now.
a pop.
For adults, and well worth it. I mean, I had my doubts, and you want to wear a jacket, and we had to buy some jackets. We didn't have enough coats. The kids didn't bring any.
True frugal story.
This is a great story.
We were reading all about Tuckaliki Caverns, and it said
59 degrees.
59 degrees,
Yeah.
and these were the reviews that we read, like on travel sites. So once again, I told you get honest reviews from people who've really done it. Mm-hmm. They said it's a great experience, worth the $20. Make sure you take a jacket. It's like 58 degrees, that far down below the surface of the earth. So I'm reminding the kids, right? I am the one who is organized, and I reminded the kids, I'm like, take your jacket. Well, we walk out of the cabin. It was like an hour, 45 minute hour drive from the cabin.
That's a little way.
And we are 3/4 of the way there, and we realized that Daniel's the only one who remembered to bring a jacket. The rest of us jacketless. And I'm like, we are going to get your phones out, boys. We are going to source a Goodwill somewhere. There's got to be a secondhand store somewhere between here and Tuckaleke Falls. Go. And so we find this little out of the way.
Wasn't it called like Two Sisters or
It was
something like that?
And
it was in Pigeon Forge.
So we drive up and we walk in and we tell the lady, we're like, hey, we're headed to Tuckaleke Falls and we forgot to bring jackets. We all need something long sleeve to wear. And she goes, well, I got this
one rack.
One rack.
It wasn't a big area. It was a small store. It had one rack, and believe it or not, she says, well, the jackets right now are on sale, $2 a piece.
Well, was there anything on that rack? Anything on that rack
piece.
was $2 a piece. And I looked at the boys. I said, you will find something that you can wear without embarrassment, hopefully, that is on that rack for $2. And fortuitously, we all found something. So that is how frugal people do things when you accidentally forget something back at the cabin or at home. Paid things. The first thing that you want to do is really make sure that you're looking at the various websites to find honest reviews from people who have been there. They're going to tell you if it's worth the money, not worth the money, if it's a super long, super horrible hike to take with kids. If you can't take a stroller, there's no way you could have taken a stroller to Tuckaleke Caverns.
No
way.
It's very, very steep stairway just getting down into the
They're
cavern.
going to tell you how hard it is to get down 80 feet and back up 80 feet.
Yeah.
On this vacation, it was the first time that my Fitbit, I reached 100 stories climbed in one day because I was wearing my Fitbit during that incredibly long 5-mile hike. So it's going to tell you whether it's worth it, whether it's not worth it. So make sure that you're looking at that. Look for a package deal. Sometimes with these things, if you buy entrance to one attraction, you can get like a triple play. So you get 3 attractions for one price. And sometimes that is less expensive to do that. Sometimes, and we've been in this position where we kind of did the math and thought, we will never be back here again. Like, I don't know, maybe ever, certainly not within the next 12 months, but it was actually less expensive for us to buy a family pass than it was for us to buy individual tickets. So we bought a yearly pass, knowing we would never go back there again in the next 12 months, but it was cheaper than paying individual ticket prices.
And another thing you can do is look for a professional discount. If you work for law enforcement or you're a teacher or a civil servant, they probably will have maybe a list of what would qualify for that. Then you can get a professional discount, and that'll save you quite a bit of money.
For years, I got a professional discount when I worked in radio, and
or even a free pass.
And we got free passes to Six Flags, and
and our fair, our local fair.
So sometimes just because I was with the media, it didn't matter if I was reporting on it online or not. If I was with the media and I could prove it, I got a discount or I got free entrance into things. So just think of that, professional discount. Here's another one that we have to remember to bear in mind. Go ahead, honey, you can say it.
Okay. Remember, if you're over 50, 60. 50. Sometimes it's 50. you can
yes,
get
it's that senior citizen discount.
You can get a senior citizen's discount. I don't think.
Just remember to look for it. We don't feel old.
We don't take advantage of that much. We got young kids. I don't feel like a senior citizen, but technically, I guess I am. So, yeah.
Check for coupons online and see if you can snag yourself some coupons. Sometimes if you buy tickets in advance, you get special perks, like you don't have to stand in line. You can go to the paid, where you've already paid to get your ticket, and you can go in and get in earlier and get in ahead of the line. So check for that online.
Call ahead and check to see if they don't offer some discount days. Sometimes there's a slow day during the week, maybe a Tuesday or Thursday, where they're trying to promote their place a little bit more, so they'll charge less. And we did this with our Airbnb. It turned out that the rates were cheaper Monday through Friday than they were on the weekend. So we booked it for Monday through Friday.
Make sure you look for that. All right, we have gone through all of the areas of our vacation planner. And I want to remind you that if you like this form, you can get one free. There is a link in the description of this video. I'm going to slide this over here. And We're going to see what did we spend on each area of the vacation that we talked about today. We gave you all of our frugal hacks for making vacations work on a budget. Did we make our $2,000 budget or did we not? The answer is no. We went over by
$50.
That's it.
That's
50
all.
bucks over, and we were pretty doggone happy with that for
Yeah.
a 6-day family vacation for 6 people for $2,000. Now, if you want to know more about the ways that you can actually think about providing yourself with some little extras, even though you are frugal, take a look at the video that's showing right there over to the side, and you're going to be able to see all about luxuries that we actually buy, even though we're frugal and on a budget. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.